You are listening to The Rant.
Please go away. Let me sleep for the love of God.
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit.
You are listening.
So the best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway.
You fucking crazy, man. You sound insane. Do you realize that?
To The Rant.
I speak jive.
Oh, good.
I've been saying it. I've been saying it for 10 damn years. Ain't I been saying it, Miguel? Huh? I've been saying it.
You are listening to The Rant with David King.
Welcome to The Rant. I am your host, David King. It is good to be here with you today on this March 28th. Yes, March 28th. We're about a week late on this very special episode. Part 10. If you can believe it, we're already there. I personally can't believe it. It feels like, I don't know. I feel like we just started this thing. Not really. It's been a long journey, folks, but we are at part 10, second to the last. We've only got one more part to the series to go. If you don't know, this is an 11-part series where we cover The Walking Dead season by season. This is part 10, so we are covering season 10 of The Walking Dead. If you've been following me along on this journey, thank you. I appreciate it. I know that at some times, and at many times lately anyway, it can be quite painful, but you're enduring along with me, and I appreciate that immensely. Needless to say, season 10, holy moly. Season 10 was actually, all in all, in my opinion, not all that bad. There was something to the Whisperers. I don't like them as a character, and I'm going to get into it here in a minute. But it was still, I guess, interesting enough to where it kept my interest alive to think, okay, where's this going to go? What's going to happen? But there are moments where you're just kind of like, it's eye rolling. But that's kind of to be expected at this point with the way the season's going. So let's get into it. Let's not waste any time because it's a long season. I didn't know this, but it was an extended season. I didn't know it until episode 16. But there were several more episodes, so there's a lot to break down and a lot to get into, so I'm not going to waste any time because the last thing I want to do is spend 2 hours talking about The Walking Dead with you. And I know you don't want to listen to a 2-hour podcast. Or maybe you do. Let me know. Hit me up in the comments. All right, so, excuse me. Hold on. Got to clear my throat. All right. So here we are. We're not long after the last season. So we see the group. They're on the beach now training, which is quite interesting, looking kind of like Spartan warriors with makeshift shields, bows and arrows, spears and swords. And they're training to fight the Whisperers, or the Deadheads, as I like to jokingly call them. Again, this is a pretty interesting scene. You see them kind of in a fighting formation. It's something you would probably see in like the movie Troy or whatever. But again, I can't help but ask the question again, because this is a huge deal to me. Where are all the guns? What happened to the armory that Alexandria and the others had built up to defeat Negan? Not to mention the weapons that they took off of Negan's soldiers, because when they defeated Sanctuary and the Saviors, they took the weapons from them and would not let them have any weapons. So they should have like this gigantic stockpile of firearms, and there's really none to be found anywhere. And I can't wrap my head around it. There's no argument to be made for it because they had the capability of making bullets. Ugene, why isn't Ugene making bullets? You know, he's a bullet maker. He made bullets for Negan. He made a bullet for Rosita. He is quite capable of doing it. Why is he not doing it anymore? Now, granted, I will tell you this, that the idea that someone could make bullets in abundance in the apocalypse is very unbelievable to begin with, because you have to source all the ingredients to make a bullet. You need the blast caps. You need the brass, which the brass wouldn't be hard to find. You could find the brass, no problem. But then you have to make the bullet, which is generally, if I remember, it's a lead it's lead, and then it's jacketed in copper. All that sort of stuff is pressed together. It's stamped. It wouldn't be very easy for you to just, grind down metal and make a bullet. And then also do it in such a way where it's, accurately done, so it travels through the firearm without, jamming. And then on top of that, remains accurate after a certain amount of feet, because if there's any defects in it, it could tumble and lose trajectory, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of science that goes into bullets that I don't think people quite realize. And certainly the people in this show definitely don't know anything about it. I'm quite convinced that nobody who made this show or had a hand in making this show knew a damn thing about firearms in any way, shape, or form. But nonetheless, Ugene had the ability to make bullets 2 or 3 seasons ago, and now is no longer apparently capable of doing it. Don't know why. There's no rhyme or reason to it, other than there's one simple answer to all of it. One, the writers think that you're stupid and won't remember the infinite ammo cheat code that they unlocked with all their fully automatic weapons when they fought Negan and his army, because they knew the war with Negan would be far too boring, parentheses, quotations, if the group actually had to think about how to tactfully take out or commedere resources from Negan's outpost to aid in their fight against the Sanctuary. There was no clever writing during that season whatsoever. It was just like, let's just fire guns continuously in the air and not hit anything. So instead, we will just, we'll have big explosions and lots of gunfire. But don't worry, none of your favorite characters will get hit, will die, or anything like that. But anyway, sorry, I digress. And two, the writers know that the Whisperers, as an enemy, would be pretty easy to defeat with the colonies having all of their firepower. So instead, they wrote them back to the 8th century. That's the only way they could make this enemy really make sense or work. Because the reality of it is they'd be a no threat at all, period. And honestly, they shouldn't be much of a threat with all the arrows and stuff that they have as well, but they are. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think it was, like I said, I think it was kind of cool. They were able to build these shields and adapt this sort of tactic of fighting, especially against the dead. But it's still laughable because they have a bullet maker. Like, we know this. The writing told us so. So in the back of my head the whole time, I'm thinking, why is there no guns? And the question you have to ask yourself is, why are there some people with guns, and some people with no guns? Why is it convenient that Gabriel pulls out a shotgun and only has 2 shells for said shotgun, but then later in the season seems to have far more rounds? So there's a little bit of confusion there. Like, ammo seems to pop up when it's necessary for the plot. And it just isn't very good. But anywho, I digress. I move on. This point just frustrated me so much. I don't know if it was just an oversight or they just said, screw it. I'm trying to figure out why they went down this road. I bet there's a reason. There's probably like a logistical reason for why they moved away from so many firearms. Maybe it costs too much money to have that kind of those props on set, and it's just cheaper to have a bow and arrow prop. So they wrote it where there's no more guns left now. Also, it probably is cheaper because you don't have to have all those firearms on set. Even though they're not firing real ammunition, they still have to have a weapons handler on set. I'm sure of that. They have to release all those weapons. They have to then go back into post and edit in all of the guns firing, which is what they had to do during the Negan War. And it was, like I said in the previous specials, it was painfully bad looking because, yeah, there was a muzzle flash and there was a sound, but there was no other actions. The bolts weren't moving. There was no brass coming out of the ejection port. So you knew there was no actual recoil to the firearms, and it just looked really bad. You could tell that the actors were adding in fake recoil because sometimes it wouldn't line up with when they were actually firing the weapon. Because that's the thing, like, they weren't pulling triggers, right? So they would just reach out and they'd have their fingers clenched, because, hey, it's a fully automatic rifle. And then they would mimic the recoil, and then you would sometimes see that didn't really line up with the actual firing of the weapon. It was really bad. So I have a feeling they probably were just like, look, it's too much work and we don't have a budget for blanks and everything else. So let's just write these people back into medieval times. But anywho, moving on, suddenly out of nowhere, a satellite comes crashing down to Earth, creating a massive forest fire that Oceanside and the others will then have to cross into Alpha's territory to deal with. It was a risk that they thought was willing to take, because if they didn't do anything about it, the fire would come into Oceanside and burn down their territory. They managed to work through the night into the next day and put the fire out. And then Ugene sees an opportunity to grab some hard to find parts off the wreckage. So, in reality, that thing probably would have burned up mostly in the upper atmosphere. If I had to guess, there's not a whole lot you would be able to get off of that, but he manages to scrum a few parts for his radio. And then so moving on, we get a little bit of a backstory on how Alpha and Beta have met. They meet in kind of what looks to be like an insane asylum, kind of showing us just how insane Alpha is, and Beta seems to maybe have been a resident of that said funny farm that she stumbled into. At least that's what I got from it. If not him, certainly someone he cared about, because she takes him out as a walker and he kind of freaks out. And then he wears that dude's head face as a mask. It's really, really strange. The whole Beta story is weird. You get very little backstory into it, but you just know he's just a very strange cat. We get introduced to a new deadhead. Her sister was the one with the baby in the last season at Hilltop. Her name is Gamma. Well, she gets dubbed Gamma. This one sister, they're sisters. Needless to say, the sister with the baby kind of went nuts after losing her child. More than nuts than you'd already have to be a part of Alpha's group. That's not saying a whole lot. I mean, honestly, what rational person would stumble upon this group and think to themselves, yeah, this is a life for me? Mm-hmm. Walking around, smelling the dead all day, eating worms. Sure, sounds great. That's the way I want to live. That's how I want to survive. I hate this enemy because they're just too ridiculous. It's too over the top. But yet, it seemed their little feud with Alexandria and Hilltop seems to be far more interesting than the war with Negan. And then I think that's really sad. It should never have been that way. If I'm sniffling into the microphone, folks, I apologize. I'm trying not to, but I have the absolute worst allergies right now. I've taken an allergy medicine. It's probably not kicked in yet. but there's stuff blooming right now in Georgia, and it is just tearing me up. So if it annoys you, I apologize. I'm trying not to do it. I'm trying to hit the cough button, but sometimes I forget to hit it because oftentimes I don't need to hit it, and so I'm not used to that. So if I do it, I apologize. Bear with me. I'm trying to keep doing these shows and staying on top of it, even though my allergies have made me tired and stiffly. So anyway, the one sister ends up killing her sister to gain favor with Alpha. Something she will later regret, that's for sure. Back at Alexandria, they're getting pounded by hordes of walkers, one after another. They fight all day and night, exhausted from fending them off. They are all very sure this is Alpha's doing, which we all know that. Eventually, Gamma shows up telling them Alpha wants to meet. We get a little more Negan time as he fights off walkers with very resentful Aaron. Meanwhile, Carol starts having hallucinations from the lack of sleep and the pills that she's taking. This episode was kind of strange, but whatever. It kind of just felt like filler. Back at the hilltop, a wall collapses, and from a tree that falls on a fell tree on a building, trapping people inside. Folks from Alexandria head off to go and help them. Again, they believe that this is the work of Alpha because the tree didn't seem to break from anything other than maybe someone cutting at it or whatnot. Lydia, meanwhile, at Alexandria encounters a bit of bullying from some Alexandria folks that escalates them into jumping her at night and almost killing her. Negan magically comes out of nowhere to save her and accidentally kills one of the bullies. Oh, well. And the others have the audacity to get upset and blame Lydia and Negan. I don't know. This is weird to me. It's like, what? It's like you jumped her. Maybe next time don't try to kill the girl and one of yours won't accidentally die in the process. It's like how it would be like a man mugging you and then getting mad at you for being arrested for mugging you. Or getting upset that someone jumped in and beat his ass because he tried to mug you. It's the idea, the audacity these guys are mad at Negan for defending Lydia is bonkers. It's just bananas. Regardless, though, the two boys are punks and they're very unlikable, so nobody cares. They are, after all, the ones that got Henry in trouble back in season 9. Needless to say, Negan's now in trouble. Where half the community wants his head on a pike and the other half kind of understands that he saved Lydia and they're not really sure what to do, yet they really don't care if Negan dies because nobody really likes him for good reason. They fought a war against him. So somehow Negan escapes prison and leaves Alexandria. We know someone let him out, but at this point in the story, we don't know who. We get, as an audience, what we want. Well, at least what I want, which is more focus on Negan. And we see Negan is the only really because this is the more time they focus on Negan, the better, as far as I'm concerned. He's the only interesting character left on this show. He's funny too, which is because he's a bit of a smartass. He's very snarky. He likes to mess with people. He lives by his own moral code, much like an anti-hero. All in all, he's just a great character who hasn't reached his arc yet, and I think he's the only one that can really carry the show. He's now wandering. He's now kind of off wandering the woods in search of food and shelter. You can see he's kind of struggling with that because he's drinking water out of a creek, and then he very quickly gets sick from that. Here's the thing, folks. If you're ever stuck out in survival mode and you don't have food and water, do not drink the water straight from the creek. I don't care if you're in the foothills of Montana. You don't want to drink that water. That water is filled with bacteria. It's going to make you very sick. You need to boil that water. You need to filter that water. Otherwise, you will be one sick dog. And unfortunately, as thirsty as Negan was, he went for it anyway, and then he got very sick. Eventually, though, he stumbles across an obsessed fanboy. Apparently, this boy named Brandon, his father served under Negan and told Brandon all the stories about him. Brandon reveals that he has Negan's original leather jacket. So for a moment, we think, maybe this is the old Negan coming back. Maybe. he's telling all these stories about what, to Negan about what his dad told him and blah, 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 and thinks Rick's a prick and hates him, blah, blah, and all these things. And during all of this, they stumble across a woman in a bus screaming because she's being attacked by walkers. Negan promptly jumps into the bus, saves her, and finds a boy with her as well. And for whatever reason, Brandon seems to think that Negan would want to kill them. I have no idea why, but he has some sort of perverted idea of who Negan is based off what his father told him and the folklore behind him. We have to remember, guys, it's like 6 years later. So all the rumors, myth, and lore is, it could be twisted two ways to Sunday by now. He seems to think that would be something that Negan used to do, which was kill random strangers, but Negan calmly tells him that he doesn't kill women and kids and that people are a resource. And at this point, Negan's, a little bit freaked out by this guy. He realizes Brandon's kind of a weirdo. But, Negan has his own code. He's not going to kill Brandon. He's just going to give Brandon a chance to kind of piss off. Brandon certainly doesn't understand what he's saying about the whole people being a resource thing. So Negan tells him basically to leave and never come back around. I don't blame him on that one. We get a nice moment here where Negan and the little boy are kind of bonding together. Negan tells him some jokes and things about being, playing games that he used to play, which was flicking people in their beanbag, which is not fun. Boys and girls do not hit men in their beanbag. It does not feel good. It's not funny. It can cause damage. So don't play that game. All right. It's not fun. If a man hits you in your coin purse, I think you have every right to lay a haymaker across his face as far as I'm concerned. Unless you know him, maybe that's fine. But anywho, they kind of bond and make jokes, and Negan tells him that he's going to take them to Hilltop where it's safe. And that kind of that really plays with you at this moment because you're thinking, okay, Negan escaped. We don't know how he escaped. Negan's got his leather jacket back. He's got his own makeshift Lucille. We think that maybe he defected from Alexandria. He's now on his own trying to survive. But when you hear him say like, hey, I'm going to take you to Hilltop where it's safe, but he also follows that up with, but you got to promise everybody that it wasn't me who dropped. You can't tell them that I dropped you off. So he doesn't want to be seen. So it's like, okay. But again, that just could mean he doesn't want to go back to the colonies, to those groups. He doesn't want to be a part of them anymore. But what does that mean? Does that mean he's going to go back to being the big bad Negan? I don't know. He's already gone back to the sanctuary once before and paid it a visit and realized it was gone and there was nothing to it back in season 9. So hard to say here. But anyway, he sets off to go gather firewood, and when he comes back, he sadly finds the child and the mother both dead, and Brandon standing there who'd killed them, thinking, for some crazy reason, Negan was playing mind games and actually did want him to do that, and he took it upon himself to kill the woman and the boy, thinking that he was taking some initiative. Well, in the words of my staff sergeant, your initiative fucked you. I can remember when my staff sergeant told me that once. Your initiative effed you, King. And in this situation for Brandon, your initiative definitely screwed you over big time. We get to kind of see a bit of Negan's own moral code. Obviously, this doesn't sit well with him. And he picks up a rock and he bashes Brandon's brains in. All in all, just a really sad scene, really. I mean, that poor woman and boy didn't deserve that, and Negan knew it. And it goes to show you that Negan has quite a big heart here because he cares I think he cares more about people than you would have thought he did 3 or 4 seasons ago. Or like when you first met him, when he walked out of that camper, you probably wouldn't have associated him with caring and having a heart. But we have to remember who Negan is. Like, Negan is just as much as Rick is just as much Negan in so many ways. And yet we put Negan in this bad guy pedestal. But we could have all very easily been watching Negan's story up until that point of the camper. And you kind of get a little insight into that later on with Michonne. Maybe we'll touch on that a little bit. So that's kind of like a really kind of a scene that kind of opens us up to a little bit more of a sympathetic side of Negan, where you're starting to see him be caring for the people that need to be cared for, but he's willing to, again, go to his inner monster and do the things that he knows he needs to do to protect people. And he's not afraid to punish someone. And he's certainly not afraid to take out bad guys. And we kind of learn about why at the end of this season. And I think you know what I'm talking about, because the final episode of the season was the best episode of the season, or of season 10 by far. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on. And that's after the scene here, we see Negan press on into the dark and misty woods, where we hear his little catchphrase, which we all love, little pigs, calling out to the dead. And the zombies show up, and, you know, you just see him crack a smile, and he's like, there we are. And I just got to think, it's good to have Negan back. You know what I mean? Not soon after though, he gets captured by the Whispers, and he tells them that he can help them with Alexandria. Oh my. What do we have going on here? Is Negan turning against the colonies? What is going on here? It was certainly a confusing moment, because I thought there's no way that Negan is joining forces with the Whisperers. He has to be. The whole time I thought to myself, he's not actually trying to join the Whisperers. He's taking the initiative, and he's getting in bed with these guys because he's going to try something. He's going to take them out because he knows what they're doing to Alexandria and Hilltop. So he's doing his part. He's doing something. He's up to something, but I think it's for the benefit of Alexandria, not to go against them. Something he was trying to do was going to earn favor with Alexandria, but time would tell on that for sure. And so from here, we get Carol heading off into the woods and Daryl following. She says she's going to find Negan, but really she's going after Alpha. This perturbs Daryl a little bit. Negan is tested by the Deadheads and actually survives it, further pissing off Beta. It's a great scene between Negan and Beta, because Negan's just being Negan, where he is running his mouth the entire time. And the whole thing about the Whisperers is they're all very quiet, and they like the quiet. They don't want a lot of talking. If they do talk, they whisper. That's why they're called the Whisperers, I guess. And so Negan, insensibly running his mouth, being kind of the arrogant man that he is, the reason why we love him so much, you could tell is just ticking off Beta. And so Beta kind of has enough of him. It's one of those things where it's like, if you can survive this, you can be a part of our group, but you probably won't survive it, so don't worry. But he does, and you can just tell that pisses Beta off even more. Meanwhile, back in Alexandria, there's an awful stomach bug plaguing the community. Now, earlier in the season, we saw Gamma dumping zombie guts into the stream, so we know it's that. But they should be boiling or filtering their water, so that's what I didn't understand, at least not at first. However, we later find out that the water filter system was messed with, and one of the handles was bent to make it look like it was in the right direction. Sadiq, the doctor at Alexandria, eventually figures out that it was Dante, the assistant doctor, who sabotaged the water supply system, but unfortunately is taken out by Dante. Rosita catches him and fights him off, and Dante is thrown in jail. And this is where we find out that Dante was actually a Whisperer all along and was sent in to do recon and sabotage the community. Gabriel, just a sidebar note here, is losing his damn mind more and more as the show progresses. This man is moving. This is the thing, and this often can happen to weak men. And you have to remember Gabriel's character. It's been so long since he's come onto the show, so we kind of forget where he started. But he was very much a weak man, very scared, very fragile, and because of his weakness, it led to his flock dying. He trapped the people of his church outside where they were killed, and he has to live with that guilt. So now he's kind of gained this ability to stand up and do the things that's necessary. He's found his inner monster, but is leading to more irrational behavior or thoughts. And it's harder for him to keep it in line, or at all, really, for that matter. And it's moving him further and further away from God. Like I said, he's found his inner monster, and good on him, but he's allowing that monster to dictate who he is. And in some ways, I think it's challenging his faith. Often we hear him make comments about how he's the Lord's not speaking to him. In fact, we heard a lot more about that in season 11. He has very, very little sympathy or time for his enemies or people that he perceives to be his enemies. He's very quick to take them down. He's not slow to react or quick to listen. Let's just put it that way. And you may say in this new world that is a character trait that's worth having. Maybe it is, fair enough. But this is a man of faith. He's supposed to live a Christ-like life. And living a Christ-like life can oftentimes mean that you have to make sacrifices in order to do the right thing. You have to be able to trust and love and potentially hear out your enemy. And I know that can be very difficult to do, but if you're going to preach the Bible, you might want to try to live by it. And nonetheless, the longer he survives in this new world, the more and more he goes down this rabbit hole, the further he gets away from his faith and the more irrational he becomes. It's not to say that Gabriel's a bad man. I don't think he's a bad man at all. I think he's much like any one of us, to be honest. If you get pushed enough and you've been in a situation where you've had to do a lot of bad things, it can put you into a very dark place. It can put you into an area much like Gabriel is going, where again, no patience for his enemies, no thought, no sympathy at all, just one mode. And so Gabriel, he goes to visit Dante at the prison and basically kills him right there as revenge for Sadiq and what he did to Alexandria. And you know what? You may say, good on him. Dante was a bad guy. He tried to kill, he killed people in Alexandria. He tried to kill more people. He tried to sabotage it. But what we have to understand is Alexandria is supposed to be a law and order sort of civilization. Inside the walls, they're trying to build the old world back up. Outside the walls is the old world, the new world, where there is no law, there's no order, there's no justice, there's just survival. And so you may think to yourself that just him taking out Dante the way he did was the best thing to do. And maybe it was, fair enough, but I think personally it would have been much better for the community to have tried him and hung him for his crimes so people could see that there was a sort of system of justice, not vigilantism, which can lead to instability, especially in a community like that. So Gabriel, he's going dark, period. And you only see that get worse and worse. And you'll also see that his patience becomes almost non-existent, period. He lashes out even at the people he loves in anger. You must be a monster. You really do. But you also must control that monster. And in other words, you must control your emotions. And Gabriel just isn't doing that. He can't do it. Meanwhile, Ugene, he's living his best life right now. He's managed to make a stronger radio with the satellite parts and begins to search for another group somewhere, trying to find people further out. And suddenly a mysterious woman comes over the comms. And that was pretty neat. A man shows up at Oceanside causing a fight. They captured him. But back at Alexandria, the group sets off on a high-stake mission. That's when Carol spots Alpha and goes after her. The group chases after Carol, and they all end up trapped in a cave full of walkers. This is where Alpha's herd is being stored. So they were going off to find Alpha's herd. Could not find it. It was not where they said it would be, but it was. It was just underground. Apparently there's caverns there. And so they're now trapped in that cavern with the dead, and they have to narrowly escape these caverns. And yes, pun intended, this episode actually gave me the willies quite a bit with all the tight quarters and the few stranglers of zombies that would follow them through those tight spaces. It made it very kind of nerve-wracking white knuckle moments. It was actually a really well shot episode. Watching them have to kind of jump from wall to wall and climb and crawl, and at any moment one of them could slip and fall right into this pit of walkers. And it kind of gave you the old sense of, you know, like the old Indiana Jones movies, like where he was thrown into the pit of snakes, and at any moment, you know, he could just get bit by one of these cobras. And he just loved that kind of suspense, and I thought it was really well done. Also, it was very dark, so it was hard to see, and that kind of added to the suspense quite a bit. All in all, absolutely just loved that episode. Meanwhile, though, you know, Carol, she's just gone off the reservation altogether, and she's just not thinking clearly anymore. And I'm not really a fan of this because it's kind of way off character for her, because she's always been the very strong, clever, level-headed, willing to do what needed to be done to the benefit of the group. She never really made irrational decisions, you know, or selfish decisions for that matter. And right now she's making very silly ones and being more emotional and irrational than she normally would. And you could say, well, that's because of Henry's death and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, maybe I could see that being the case for her. But again, when her daughter died, you know, it only really made her stronger. It didn't make her irrational. Yes, she was sad and she was tore up and broken up about it. But by the third season, she started coming into her own character, and she became a very reliable character. And this is just kind of way off base for her. But I've also noticed that since Negan, since she's been captured, when she was captured by one of Negan's groups, and she was being held there, and she had the rosary in her hand, and she started like hyperventilating and crying. I couldn't tell if she was faking that or if that was genuine. I couldn't tell. I thought it was like her faking it so she could keep the rosary, so she could use it to escape. And I think that's what it was. But ever since that kind of episode, her character started kind of having peculiar moments that I thought were a little off base. Not often as much as she is now. And again, later in the season, it gets even worse in my opinion. It just doesn't make sense because the writers kind of took her in a weird direction that I thought was really off character. So the group is stuck in the cave. The group stuck in the cave, rather, finds an old mine shaft and possibly a way out. They've already kind of narrowly crawled through this just very tight opening. I thought Jerry was not going to make it. Because he wasn't going to be able to fit, and they actually got him out, and I thought, oh man, Jerry, this isn't the way you got to go, brother. Come on. Which, by the way, I like Jerry's character quite a bit, and I like his banter between him and Ezekiel. It's very entertaining. But how in the hell is anybody fat in the zombie apocalypse? Not a jab at the actor. I'm not trying to be, you know, fat shame him or anything like that, but you have to wonder. It's like, these people are like borderline starving every day, and the only thing that they really have in abundance is fruit and vegetables. You don't see a whole lot of livestock. How in the world do these people have? How is anybody fat in this show? I think, me personally, if I was going to write a zombie apocalypse or apocalypse show, period, I would not cast overweight people, unless there was a situation where, you know, you went to a community where they were in abundance, right? And they were like gourting themselves. Then you would have that, I suppose. But you would not be overweight in the apocalypse. There's not enough food, and you're running around all the time. Like, it's all cardio every day, ladies and gentlemen. It's cardio, tons and tons and tons of weightlifting because you're doing manual labor. There'd be no way. You'd be like solid muscle in reality. I mean, if we're being honest. But he barely made it out, and I'm glad he did, because like, that's not the way Jerry's got to go, man. But I thought they had me going there for a minute. I thought he was going to die. Anyway, they possibly find a way out through an old mine shaft. There happens to be an old box of TNT nearby. Go figure. What are the odds of that? Because, old mines and stuff, they just leave boxes of, TNT laying around. There's nothing unusual about that. But Carol, she gets a wild hair and she tries to go and blow up Alpha's horde, and she does it in such a very strange way. She risks her life climbing on the edge of this cliff inside the cave, reaches up, puts the dynamite up in this hole, and then tries to light it, and then slips. And of course, Daryl stops her, and there is just in the nick of time to grab her and keep her from falling to her death. But unfortunately, that little piece of TNT falls and then ends up exploding. And eventually that ends up trapping Magna and Connie inside. The others do manage to escape just the nick of time, unfortunately. And at this point, we're not sure if Magna and Connie are even alive. And we won't find that out much later, whether or not they survive or not. Negan, meanwhile, is working his way up the ranks with the Deadheads and ends up giving up Gamma to Alpha as the snitch, because Alpha's trying to figure out how they knew where she was hiding this horde. And Negan was very quick to point out that Gamma's had quite a bit of contact with these people, and she knows where they're at, and it's very likely that she's the one who spilled the beans. This earns some favor with Alpha, and we get the most cringe scene in all of cinema history. And that's saying a lot, because I've seen a lot of cringeworthy stuff in my time of watching movies and TV shows. Negan and Alpha bumping uglies in the woods. Alpha also leaves her mask on too, which, by the way, this is supposed to be someone's skin. Gross. I don't know about that one, Big Dan. I would have I know like Negan's been locked up for 6 years. He hasn't had the touch of a woman. He's not exactly the town mascot over there at Alexandria. There's not a whole lot of women fawning for him. Not alone, there's not a whole lot of women left. I don't know if I would have been able to pull that one off personally, even with all of those variables in place. Also, too, Alpha's not the most attractive woman to begin with, and she left her mask on. No, I couldn't do it. That's just disgusting. I couldn't stand to watch that scene. But ladies, you got what you wanted, which was Jeffrey D. Morgan with his clothes off. So congratulations to you. Moving on though, from that epically horrifying scene, probably the scariest scene of all of Walking Dead history. Beta, though, apparently has a network of tunnels that allow him to travel and enter into Alexandria undetected, which is strange, because if they had this ability, why even bother toying with Alexandria? Just sneak in and take them all out. Just take the community and end it. But anyway, Gamma is locked up in Alexandria too, because she now regrets killing her sister and realizes Alpha is a liar. So she has turned herself over to Alexandria, and they have her locked up temporarily till they know what they can figure out what they want to do with her. I don't know why it took seeing Lydia, though, to convince her that Alpha was a liar, but again, whatever. Like, you don't think there can be civilization anymore, honestly? Do you really believe what this woman is saying, that there's no possible way to have a normal life and any kind of resemblance of a normal life? I just don't, like, the only way you can live is to walk with the dead wearing their skin. It's a bit far-fetched, but, people follow Charles Manson, so what am I to say? People are quite capable of doing some pretty stupid things. So anywho, Beta breaks in and then starts killing Alexandrians and turning them into walkers. Daryl runs into Alpha in the woods and attacks her, killing her men and getting a decent jump on her. However, they both get into a pretty nasty fight. They both end up in a repair shop bleeding out. And it's at this point that I'm not entirely sure that Daryl's going to make it. It looks like Alpha's not going to make it either. And this is a really well shot scene, because at this moment you are believing that, okay, Alpha could die, but so could Daryl, and that would be a worthy sacrifice of Daryl's character for the sake of the story. if you were going to have to kill Daryl off, he can't die like Jesus did. And I don't mean Jesus in the sense of our Lord and Savior. I'm talking about the old character from the show, the blasphemous character. Anyway, he died in a very strange and just kind of nonchalant way. Like he, obviously maybe in a way it was surprising to some degree, but it just kind of felt like unnecessary for him to go in that scene. It was very shocking to see them take him out of all people. You would have expected him to maybe go in a much bigger and more profound way, but he didn't. You can't do that with Daryl. Daryl has to go out in a very profound way. And this could have been that moment if he had to go. Thankfully he doesn't. They both end up in a repair shop. They're kind of bleeding out, barely making it. Lydia eventually comes around and turns her back on her mother, Alpha. Alpha thinks that she's kind of here to take over and take the reins from Alpha. So Alpha's telling her that you're going to have to kill me, take my mask, and run this group. And Lydia's like, F that, screw you. You're a horrible mother. You've never loved me. And I'm here, not here for you. I'm here to save Daryl. That's what she does. Needless to say, though, this all triggers a war. Again, I'm not sure why Alpha was toying with Hilltop and Alexandria, but again, whatever. Especially that they now have backdoor access to these communities. There was really no reason to screw with them. It's just like, if you don't want them around, just take them out. You're putting your people at risk, and you're just kind of, putting yourself at risk doing what you were doing. And it turns out for them at the end, that's pretty much what ends up happening. Ugene makes a breakthrough with the woman on the radio, Stephanie. She sets a meeting with him, but unfortunately those communications would be cut off because Hilltop would soon be under attack. Hilltop stays and fights, and they try their little Spartan phalanx, but it doesn't work for very long when the deadheads cover them in tree sap and then light them on fire. I'll be honest with you, that's a fantastic tactic by the Whisperers. I'm not going to lie, that was smart. You don't have guns, you don't have really much, but you do have the ability to launch, you have the ability to douse people in something that's highly flammable like that. That's pretty effective, and it burns Hilltop to the ground. Hilltop is fully engulfed as the survivors fight their way to escape. Eventually, the entire colony is destroyed, and those that are left are on the run. It's worth mentioning here at this moment that Negan assisted in the destruction of Hilltop. You would think at this point that he's in full cahoots with Alpha and the Whisperers, but he mentions an old tactic of his. So if you're thinking at first like, oh yeah, look what he's doing. He's definitely getting his revenge on Alexandria and Hilltop. So you would think that's how you would think, but you forget the mention of one of his old tactics. One that would spare the community and allow Alpha to use them as a resource. If you picked up on this, you may think it's just old Negan, but really he's trying to stop Alpha from killing all of them and destroying Hilltop. He's trying to buy himself some time. Now, this doesn't work because Alpha doesn't listen, because Alpha doesn't believe people are a resource like Negan does. Alpha is a psychopath. She's always been a psychopath from the very beginning of this zombie apocalypse. So now the group is on the run. They're held up in an old hospital as Beta searches for them with his horde. He's making his way towards Alexandria to take them out. I will say that at this point, in all reality, the group should have been able to just kind of escape, get the hell out of there because Beta and the walkers move at a snail's ass pace. Another reason why is the reason why this is an ineffective tactic to walk with the dead. You're far too slow moving. It would take you forever to move an army anywhere, and yet they managed to do it in record time, even though they're moving and stumbling very slowly. The reality is they should have been long gone off the ocean side before Beta ever found them. But again, oh well. They're the ones writing this stupid. The writers are kind of dumb at times, and they kind of put themselves into weird situations where you kind of scratch your head going, why are the people doing this? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. They could have done a better job of this. Negan finds Lydia wandering in the woods after the attack and quickly snatches her up. This part is weird because I really don't think he had to do this to trick Alpha. I think this was more or less written to trick us as the viewer, because they're trying to make us believe that Negan is working with Alpha and not working against Alpha. It kind of makes you wonder too, like why he didn't trick Alpha like this sooner. He had already earned strong favor with her prior to the attack on Hilltop. He could have lured her away before, but he didn't. He didn't need Lydia to do this, to pull this off, because she never gets taken to the shack where Lydia is even at. Lydia gets hidden off somewhere far, far away. Again, there's really, this whole scene doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And again, Negan's plan to take out Alpha could have been done way before Hilltop was ever taken out. Maybe in a way he wanted Hilltop to be destroyed. Who knows? But either way, he didn't do it before Hilltop, and it ends up being a trap for Alpha, and Negan cuts her throat and kills her, taking her head into a sack and presenting it to Carol. And so this is where we find out that Carol was the one that let Negan out of prison all this time, and she set up a deal where he would that he would go after Alpha, and if he did that, then that would earn him some favor with Alexandria. She would stick up for him, in other words. But I have to ask, really? This doesn't make it, again, this is a weird premise, because then if in fact you sent Negan off to go take out Alpha, then why did you go after Alpha when she appeared out of the woods? Why did you go after her and get you and your friends trapped? Why didn't she just let Negan do his work? After all, their mission was to find the Horde, not find Alpha. And again, Carol makes a very irrational decision, and it just is really off character for her to do that. You would never expect her to do that in the past seasons. She would have been much more calculated than just running after her, especially when she's already sent Negan off to do that. Why did she even recruit Negan in the first place? Why not just do it yourself? Or better, tell the community the plan to send Negan into the group as an assassin. Instead, you don't tell them, and it gets the community and the others in serious danger. Again, not a typical Carol move. By the way, there's a lot of hallucinating in this season too. You could tell the writers aren't really that creative anymore. They just kind of keep writing the same scene for just different characters. We find the children, later on, we find the children with the blacksmith man. Unfortunately, he's bit and he tries to take his own life with a rail spike. That doesn't quite work out. And Judith is the one that has to put him down. Daryl and the others end up finding the kids and moving on to the hospital to hide out. And then in good old Walking Dead fashion, the following episode has nothing to do at all with what is happening at Hilltop. Instead, we get an entire episode dedicated to Michonne tripping balls and seeing an alternate life for her if she had not saved Andrea. This episode's weird. It's the best way I can describe it. It feels very out of place. Doesn't really feel like it helps move the plot along. It doesn't add anything to the story, really. Not enough anyway to justify it being its own episode. First off, the dude has locked up some other people too for what appears to be a very long time, and now she's locked up in like a cell next to them. But she manages to get out and free the others, and naturally they want to kill this guy, but Michonne talks them out of it somehow. It's just a stupid scene. It's a stupid bit of dialogue. The premise is dumb. It was the only cool part of this entire episode was seeing the alternate universe of which, if Michonne had just left Andrea to die, she ends up getting picked up by Negan's group and working for Negan. And it just kind of reaffirms what I've said in the past, which is we could have just as easily been watching Negan from season 1 to now as we were watching Rick, and you would probably have the same feelings that we all had towards the Saviors as we would towards Rick's group. If we were Team Negan from season 1 up to now, we would probably hate Rick and his group and want Negan to take him out for what they did to those people at the satellite station. It's very easy to believe that because Negan and Rick are not that much different. Sure, Rick is a much better leader because he doesn't lead with force. He's not extorting people like Negan was, but Negan was nonetheless a very fierce leader. I don't agree with everything he did, but you kind of find out later on why he did the things that he was doing. You find out in season 9 that Sanctuary was it was a great stronghold for people to live but it wasn't a great place to grow anything. So they couldn't really grow food or raise cattle or anything like that. But it was an excellent place to protect yourself from the dead and the living, for that matter. And we know Negan fears the living as much as he fears the dead. And so what is the answer to that? That's fine. We'll go find these other communities and they'll provide to us and we'll provide them protection. Even though really his lieutenants took it out of hand and it became more of like working for the mob. There really was no protections there. It was just, we're going to take you out if you don't bring us what we need. But it was an interesting thing to see her working for him and what that would look like. But other than that, it was just a really pointless, boring, strange season with a strange male character that didn't make any sense, who was acting in a way that didn't make a whole lot of sense. He was doing things that you would probably not want to associate with this guy afterwards. You wouldn't give him a pass. That's for damn sure. And she certainly does. She just kind of forgives him and moves on. But it's like, I don't know, man. It's all weird. And I get it. He has kind of a sob story, so she kind of gets sympathy for him. But again, it's weird to me. It was just a very out of place episode. It did not feel like it needed to be its own thing. So anyway, they find a boat. They managed to jerry rig this boat somehow in a manner of a very fast amount of time. They rig this boat to run. They fix it up to work and they get back over towards Oceanside. But somehow on this boat, of all places, Michonne winds up on a boat and finds Rick's boots and then an old phone with Judith and her etched in on it. She freaks out and begins to wonder if Rick is still alive and reaches out to Judith to tell her that she needs to go off and find him, leaving Judith behind now with no parents. Not just Judith, but her and Rick's son as well, RJ. He is now alone with no parents in the zombie apocalypse. So that's smart. Again, what are the odds that Michonne finds a boat to get her back to Oceanside and it happens to have Rick's boots on it? I mean, hey, there you go. But that's smart. They're just going to leave Judith back. You'll be fine. There's plenty of adults around to take care of you. You don't really have any real parents anymore anyway. You're just kind of a bastard child. So you're not going to miss me, even though I raised you for like the last 6 years. I hate this episode. Again, it makes little sense. Adds nothing to the story at all or helps it move it along. It felt pointless and out of place. Sure, they needed to find a way to write off Michonne, but they could have written this in with like the Hilltop story and not dedicated an entire show to it. It was just poorly written and dumb and unnecessary. And again, goodbye for now, Michonne. And don't come back until you find Rick. Okay? And I doubt you will. I have a feeling that was your last episode. It was supposed to be like, and that's the thing, like it was supposed to be like this emotional moment where she was like very emotional with Lilith or with Judith saying, oh, I'm going to miss you and everybody, but I've got to do this now. I've got to go off and find this person and blah, blah, blah. And I'm assuming that the show was trying to make us feel emotional. Like we're supposed to know that Michonne's gone. Like this is it. But I didn't feel that there. In fact, I didn't really know that she was being written off until I realized I haven't seen her. And I'm 11 episodes into season 11 and I still haven't seen any Michonne. So I'm like, oh, okay. I guess that was her farewell episode. They written her off. Okay. But they, again, like you didn't know and you don't feel emotion in that scene because you don't really know that she's going away. You think, okay, well, she's setting off to go find Rick. So maybe there'll be like a side story plot where she's meeting different people and whatever, but you haven't seen anything. So I have to think, well, maybe she's been written off. I don't know. It's really, really weird. It's just a bad episode. Anyway, Hilltop has fallen and Ugene wants to take a few folks with him to set off to meet Stephanie in hopes of finding a new community after the fall of Hilltop to help his people. He knows that they need help and he wants to set off to find Steph because he thinks that they're going to be able to do that. They end up, so he takes Ezekiel and, golly, who's the Asian woman? I know what's her damn name? Let's pull it up because I forget. Eleanor Matsura, who plays Yumiko. So it takes Yumiko, Ezekiel, and they head off to go find this community where they get into this city and they run into, they end up running into a strange woman in the middle of an empty city. She happens to be another weird kind of spaz of a character who goes by the name of Princess. I don't hate this character. She's crazy because she's basically been alone for a very long time, and it shows. I do like that she kind of totes around an M249 saw machine gun like a badass. Needless to say, though, she scares off their horses and tells them that she has wheels for them. And she kind of dicks around with all of them, leading the group into a minefield, but they escape, of course, and all is well. They end up getting those wheels. They find out they're bicycles, which is not exactly enthusiastic. I was kind of hoping like maybe, but this guy actually makes sense for the princess's character because she's kooky and kind of crazy. I was thinking like she was going to take him to a warehouse full of like Ferraris and stuff because she's like, I got some sick wheels for you, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm thinking, watch it be like something absurd, like a warehouse full of exotic sports cars, but it ends up being a garage full of bicycles, which actually makes more sense with her character. Of course, Eugene's not pleased by this because they're losing time. And if he misses that window, they're going to be kind of screwed. Either way, they make do and set off to find Steph, where eventually they get to a train yard and are quickly surrounded by Imperial stormtroopers. I mean, dudes dressed in armor or something. I really don't know. And the episode ends. And we don't get to see anything about this for a very long time because the writers think that they're clever, but really they're just annoying. I really hate this theme with The Walking Dead. It's been a theme for probably since season 3 or 4. The never-ending cliffhangers are not cute, especially when you show us the things that are not all that interesting or really help the narrative in any way. I get very, very frustrated. It's like, show us what we want to see. Stop leaving us on a cliffhanger and then going off onto a completely different story the next episode. But that is The Walking Dead in a nutshell. If you ever want to learn what not to do, it's okay to do it every once in a while, because sometimes it does help to set the story up and it's necessary, but they've done it far too often, far too many times in this show over the last several seasons, and it is just annoying at this point. Meanwhile, though, back near the colonies, Beta breaches Alexandria with ease and comes to find it seems that they have abandoned it so that Beta would not destroy it. So the people at Hilltop kind of learned their lesson that Beta and Alpha, they're not interested in just taking over the communities for themselves. They're just going to completely destroy it and move on. And so in order to alleviate that possibility of happening with Alexandria, they just abandon it. So there's really no reason for Beta to destroy it, although it would have been quite hilariously ironic if he decides to just burn the place down like Sherman on his march to the sea. But he doesn't. He just sets off to find them with his army of dead. We do get a little bit of a backstory on Beta. When he finds Alpha's head, he takes her to some kind of old hangout where apparently we find out Beta was, I guess, a famous singer before all this. It isn't all that clear to me. He clearly was a singer. He has an album that he puts on. It's like such and such live. And he kind of mumbles a lot and groans about what he sees and blah, 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 and turns Alpha's face into a new mask. It's like, no, I see, blah, blah, blah. It's like, nobody cares, whatever. So he's like a singer. He's a famous singer. And now he has his army, and they're off to find the people of Alexandria and any survivors of Hilltop. He manages to track them down at the hospital where Daryl and the others make a final stand. They have a plan to pump music and distract the horde away. and lead them off a cliff in the near distance. But first they have to walk through the horde of walkers and whispers to get to the truck. It's kind of weird and random why the truck is on the other side of the compound, but it was. It's a pretty tense scene as they have to walk through without too many movements, and they have to kill whispers as they go through. Sadly, not all of them make it, but they eventually get through and begin to lead the dead away. However, others are still inside the building, and it's about to be breached. And it's about to be breached with the walkers and whisperers that are left. And Gabriel makes kind of a last stand to keep them off while the others escape. Gabriel fights hard, but wouldn't you know it, right in the nick of time and out of nowhere, Maggie appears. Holy shit, where's Maggie been? But here she is now. She's been gone for an entire season. We thought she was written off the show. We thought she wasn't going to come back, but now here she is. Maggie appears out of nowhere to save the day, right in the nick of time, which is strange. Because how did Maggie know where to find them? Don't know. How did she manage to sneak past all the dead and enter the building to save the day just in time? I don't know. But that's how it was written. Yay. Maggie hasn't encountered the Whisperers yet and knows how to get through the horde and handle them with ease, like she's been there all along. Whatever, Joe. It's okay. Convenient writing is what I call that. Needless to say, the group is saved. Hooray, Maggie. You've been gone. You've been gone for literally an entire season, and you show up just in the nick of time when the plot needed you to save Gabriel's ass. The others are off leading the horde away, but the Whisperers break through the ranks and eventually make it to the sound truck. The others make off. They eventually get to that truck and they lead the horde away. But the Whisperers break through the ranks and they eventually make it to that sound truck and they start to destroy it. Daryl and the others scatter to the woods and see that the horde is returning back towards the hospital. So Daryl tells them they have no choice but to engage the Whisperers. Of course, this should have been damn near suicidal to walk into that horde and engage with them, but they seem to do it with ease, taking each Whisperer out without a problem. And this begs the question, damn, man, if it was this easy, why bother leading the horde away in the first place? Why not just beat them at their own game like you just did? Even Beta wasn't, even Beta wasn't much to take out, as Negan and Daryl easily kill him off. There wasn't much of a fight between Beta and Daryl like I thought there would be, like there was initially when they were in that hotel room or that building a couple seasons ago. It's like no major battle, no real struggle, just bam, dead. And we see Beta get pulled into the horde and finished off. Negan recognizes him, which is kind of interesting, but it's short-lived, as Daryl kind of just says, he's nobody. I think this was a massive fail. You had all this buildup. You even had a decent fight between Daryl and Beta in the last season, like I just mentioned, and this is how you kill him off. It was pretty uneventful, if you ask me, especially with what's to come in the rest of the season. You could have made this a more suspenseful and interesting fight between Daryl, Beta, and even having Negan included, but instead it just kind of felt very rushed. Like the writers just wanted to end the conflict with the Whisperers and move on. That's really what it felt like. It felt like there was no issue for them to just walk into this horde of dead and take these Whisperers out. The Whisperers didn't even put up much of a fight. And it just begs the question the whole time, again, why the hell were these guys ever even written into this story? They're completely freaking useless. The only time the Whisperers have ever been effective was at Hilltop. And they weren't very effective there. The only reason why they got the upper hand was because they lit the whole damn place on fire. Beyond that, they weren't very successful. The group was holding them off for a very long time until they lit those fires. There's just a really dumb enemy that is completely useless. And in this moment, you see it just full force. It just all comes around. You're like, no, there's nothing. These guys were just like stumbling along in the group and didn't see, Daryl or any of them show up. It didn't really fight back. It just felt very rushed and just poorly done. Again, I have to think that maybe the writers realized this enemy is actually pretty stupid. worthless and wanted to point that out to us, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe that just kind of happened inadvertently. But the Whisperers, they're no more. The battle's over. The battle's won. And Carol elects to lead the dead off a nearby cliff, sacrificing herself because she won't be able to turn back once she gets there. And since the truck is destroyed, there's nothing to lead the herd off the cliff. So Carol, being the depressed, broken down, half shrill of the woman that she once was, elects to lead the dead off the cliff. But when you know it, as always this season, just before she goes over, Lydia saves the day and the two hide in a hole while the dead mindlessly walk off a cliff. I swear to you, no one significant is allowed to die on this show. Ever. Like they refuse. They refuse to do it. I will say to you, like nobody, none of the main characters, like none of the A-list characters, like the actual main protagonists in these shows they never die. It's always the randoms that just get put into the scene. But I'm actually glad that Carol didn't die here. I didn't want her to die. There's kind of more to be done with her character in Daryl, in my opinion. So I think it's that's the way it should be. I'm glad she didn't pass away. So that's right. Episode 16, Whispers are conquered. End of the season though, right? Nope. As I mentioned earlier on in this episode, when we were opening it up, this is an extended season. So there's actually a lot more. And well, it's not very good. When you hear about an extended season, so like if someone told me, hey Dave, the new season of Yellowstone is going to be extended, I would freak out and be like, hell yeah, man, more episodes of Yellowstone, like just keep dumping it on me, baby. I love it every moment. And honestly, I kind of was excited that this was an extended season as well. I was a little bit like, I mean, season 10 was okay. I don't know if I really wanted it to keep going, but I certainly didn't want, like, I certainly wasn't upset that there was extra episodes, because even though that this season has been more of a roller coaster ride in terms of good episodes and bad episodes and weird moments and good moments, it still has me locked in. You know what I mean? But then these episodes came. It was bad. The first one is it starts off here. There's a random hunter in the woods killing survivors from Maggie's old community. And Herschel is among them, lost in the woods. Needless to say, they get the guy and find Herschel. That about sums up that episode. It was random and pointless. I guess maybe to show Maggie is a bit of a badass now, but we always kind of knew that. I'm looking back at this episode now that I've watched more of season 11. It kind of does open you up to who they're going to meet in season 11, but not really. It doesn't tell you a whole lot. It's just a bad episode, guys. It's just the only thing you can say. It just, you kind of walk away from that going, what the hell did I just watch? So maybe it's to give you a little insight into Maggie's character, but we always kind of knew that Maggie was a badass. We never thought she wasn't. It was very obvious in this forest scene that neither her or Daryl would be killed here. One, because she just came back to the show after being gone for an entire season. You're not going to bring back a major character like that and just kill her off. And two, they had a bunch of new characters that we never met and know nothing about. And we all know that those are the ones you take out. Those are the ones to die. And that's exactly what happened. It was just very obvious. So it's not a very high tension scene. You were more or less curious about who was shooting. Like, you're kind of like, what is going on? Like, who is this? More or less, or were you worried about Daryl or Maggie getting shot? It never felt like that. That was the first random and out of place episode, followed up with another very random one with Daryl and Carol setting off and finding an old cabin where Daryl apparently met a woman, had a romantic relationship with her, and then walked away never to see her again. In his defense, he does come back for her, but she's gone. Don't worry, this one random episode is actually here to help us set up things for the next season as well. So, you could make the argument that the season before that, or the episode before that, was to set you up for season 11, but it just really doesn't. But this one does. So it does open up somewhat of a door to season 11. But again, you don't really know that. You don't really see that until you're way into season 11. So again, it's to help set things up for the next season, which is still 4 episodes of this season, of season 10 away. So you still got 4 more episodes of season 10 before you get to season 11. And also the long break of shooting season 11 in between. So good job, show. Maybe next time find a way to write the subplot closer to season 11, not so far back. That would be probably a little bit wiser. And if you were going to write this story in a way, it needs to be cohesive with what's going on in the plot now. It just felt very out of place. They're probably like, oh crap, we have this person and we got to figure out how to get her in here so she can be significant later on. So let's just kind of find a way to throw her in. That's just kind of what it felt like. But this episode wasn't the worst one. Actually, wasn't that bad, to be honest. It just felt a little random and out of place. Like, okay, this is interesting, but I really want to know what happened to Ugene and the others. So keep in mind, we're now 2 episodes. We've killed off the Whispers. We've seen that story come to an end. We are now on the additional episodes, and we still have no idea what happened to Ugene and the others. So maybe we get back to that. So let's get back to that story. Nope, not at all. Instead, you're going to get another random episode with just Aaron and Gabriel searching for food with a map made by Maggie rather. This episode literally adds nothing to the show either. It does not help build the characters or the narrative. It just feels entirely like filler. Yeah, they meet a crazy guy and blah, 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 blah. But honestly, we get it. The new world is filled with psychopaths. We don't need an entire episode to tell us this. Again, much like the Michonne episode, this should have been a subplot of an episode, not an entire episode on its own. Especially when you have much more interesting stories going on, like Eugene's story. We want to know about Ugene. We want to know what happened to them, and you're not giving that to us. You're not only delaying the cliffhanger, you have now almost feels like you've completely forgotten about it, but we haven't. So this is extremely frustrating. I don't understand this. You extended the season, and instead of giving us quality content, it feels like many of these episodes were last minute ideas and just filler. Like, hey, we got greenlit for 22 episode season, guys. Congratulations. The writer sips coffee, bags in her eyes, lack of sleep and no motivation, and grumbles to himself, really? But we only wrote this season for 16 episodes. I mean, even episode 17 felt like it was unnecessary. Like, crap, what do we do from here? How do we drag this out any longer? We're not really too sure. Much of the episodes after 16 felt out of place and made very little sense to me at all. Some will contribute to a little to season 11, but not much and not enough to justify an entire episode. I don't understand it. But finally, we get an answer. 3 episodes later, not including the original season episodes, we finally get a little bit of information as to the whereabouts in the situation with Ugene. Unfortunately, it focuses more on Princess and her really messed up past, and we don't get much else other than that. It literally is just an entire episode of Princess hallucinating in a train car by herself. So, yeah, there you go. Thanks, Walking Dead. Thanks a lot. It's frustrating. You just go, why? What were you thinking when you made this episode? Like, what was going through your brain when you said, yeah, this is great. This is gold. Let's roll it, baby. A little insight, though, I did find out that these last 6 episodes are actually COVID episodes, and that explains why they seem to only highlight one character at a time, or maybe only 2 on each episode, and it also explains why the episodes mostly suck. COVID no doubt ruined Hollywood more than it helped, and the production staff wanted to keep the show going and not put it on hold. Personally, I think it was a mistake. I'd rather you have waited for the restrictions to be lifted and produce a quality program than this drivel. And I think all the fans would have agreed. But alas, they got to make their money. Can't stay shut down. If only they would have just told Dr. Fauci to F off and not follow the ridiculous mandates. But nope, they would rather comply and make crap films. Sorry to go off topic there for a moment, but it just is frustrating. COVID inadvertently ruined a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows. If you watched a TV show in 2020 or 2021 and it seemed very strange, very poorly done, and not make a lot of sense, it was probably because of COVID restrictions. So that episode was dumb. The princess episode was dumb. It was pointless. Didn't do much. Excuse me, in answering who Ugene and the others just encountered. But it did get the development of Princess out of the way, if you want to call it that. But now on to an even worse episode. I really don't want to spend much time on this one. It's by far the worst episode of the season. Close to the last one with the princess. This one was bad. I think personally this might be the absolute worst episode of The Walking Dead ever to be made. In fact, I'll stand on that hill and claim it. This was by far the worst and dumbest episode of The Walking Dead ever created in all 10 seasons so far. To summarize this episode for you, Daryl has bike trouble and Carol finds a rat and she fumbles with it. No, better yet, she tries to make stew. Carol was acting way out of character this entire time, and strangely. Again, this is where I don't know what the writers are doing. I don't know if it was just a lack of direction or what with the actress, but her whole character and the way she was acting was really weird. It almost looked like bad acting, to be honest. The rift between her and Daryl just felt unnatural and kind of forced. Didn't feel like it was, real. Like, kind of why are they really doing this? It makes very little sense at all. There's not much to say here because there really wasn't much going on in this episode. It was literally 40 minutes of Carol trying to make soup and Daryl fixing his bike. That was literally all this was. It was awful. And I wasn't alone on this because when I set off to do my show notes for the episode, I happened to I saw that the episode got the lowest rank in The Walking Dead that I have seen ever. I could go back and look and see if anything ever ranked this low, but I don't think it has. A 4 out of 10 on IMDb. Nobody liked this episode. It was just that bad. Again, I guess you can blame COVID, but honestly, I don't blame COVID. I blame the production staff. I blame the directors. I blame the writers. It's their fault. They shouldn't have made this. They should have known better. But anyway, just when The Walking Dead gives us this complete and utter garbage, they give us the final episode of season 10, which might be, again, top 5, top 10 best episodes of The Walking Dead by far. So, you go from utter shit to gold in this episode, which is Negan's backstory. First of all, this episode is great because Negan is the only character, again, left on The Walking Dead that is interesting. He's not annoying like many of them and has not hit its character arc yet like Daryl and the other older cast members. Frankly, he could get his own spin-off show and I would do better, and it would probably do better than what we are getting now. And I'd stand on that for sure. We see that Negan was a flawed man before the fall, lost his job and was actively looking for others, but in the meantime, playing video games and kind of buying leather jackets and just doing his thing. He was not very attentive to his wife like he should have been, but that was because he was having an affair with his wife's friend. One that he ended right after he found out that his wife had cancer. That's when Negan starts to grow up. As soon as his wife gets cancer, you see a switch flip in Negan. He becomes a man in many ways and starts to take care of his shit. Then the pandemic happens and Negan is forced to try and cure his wife's cancer with chemo treatments himself. So you get this kind of story. They're surviving. It looks like in the basement of their house. He's giving her chemo treatments. He's got a generator going. Not a whole lot of encounters with the dead. You could tell he's not had a whole lot of experience killing walkers yet. He doesn't really quite like to do it. He'd rather just kind of leave him alone. But the wife says, no, the generator attracts him and I want to watch my shows or movies. I think she was picking out like a Bond movie to watch or something like that. Fun fact, I believe the woman that plays his wife in this show is his wife in real life. So that's kind of neat. Let me see. I'm almost positive it is. Here's Negan. It's the title of the show. Maybe not. No, she is. Hillary Burton Morgan, yeah. She's married to Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Spouse, yeah, Jeffrey Dean Morgan. They got married in 2019. And they have, looks like they got 2 children together. So that's neat. I love that. I'm kind of curious to know how he may have felt seeing his wife as a zombie. Like, I wonder if they kind of mess with him a little bit, you know? Kind of makes you think, like, makes it maybe easier to act in that moment because you can kind of try to make it feel real, like how you would really feel if that was a real situation. So anyway, he's trying to treat her cancer, and of course it's a long shot, but he believes in it. Unfortunately, though, the power goes out while he's asleep, and the chemo bags that he has stored in the freezer get too warm. His wife says to just stay and be with her, she's kind of tired and she's done trying to fight it, and just to be with her and just let it be. It's okay. But he does not want to give up. He's come too far. So he sets off to find some doctors nearby with supplies. Apparently there were some traveling doctors that were helping people out. Again, this is very, very early in the zombie war apocalypse. So it's very likely that you would have convoys of people like this giving out aid and trying to help where they can. He finds them, but unfortunately gets snagged up by a motorcycle club on the way back. So he does find the doctors. He gets the chemo. They were very nice enough to give it to him, put it in a cooler, but he gets snagged up by some sort of motorcycle club group on the way back, stalling him from getting to his wife. They want to know where these doctors are. Apparently they want the supplies and blah, blah, blah. He tells them, and so he eventually gets set free, and he sets off to home, where unfortunately he sadly finds his wife turned. She had passed away from the cancer. This is obviously a very emotional moment as Negan looks on with failure. He knows he has not been the best husband. He wanted to do everything he could to make it up to her, but failed in the end. And not only that, where he could have spent her final moments together, enjoying each other's company and in their love, unfortunately, he didn't get to do that. He spent it getting his face punched in by some bikers and then comes back to his wife dead. Was it his fault? No. But it changes him. And you see him tap into his inner monster immediately. Now, Negan, even before the zombie war, was very capable of finding his inner monster. He had full control over it. He didn't quite understand it, but he knew that he could go to places that he needed to in order to defend his wife. We find this out when he used it in the bar to defend her when this man was being a prick. He may have taken it too far. You could say, well, Dave, he didn't really quite control it too well because he kind of beat that guy with an inch within his life. Fair enough. He does have a little bit of control issues, but he is very capable of tapping into that. He can do what needs to be done in his eyes. And so now he's going to use it to kill the bikers and save the doctors that they kidnapped. We get a great glance here into Negan, who Negan is, and it really humanizes him. It kind of gives you a whole different perspective on his character. The reality is Negan could have been Rick, like I've said before, and Rick could have been Negan at any moment. Both men are admirable people who lost everything to the new world, and it changed them for better or worse. Negan went down a bit of a darker path. He, like I said, extorting people and controlling them kind of like a mob boss, where Rick earned the respect of his people. But it could have easily went the other way at any time for any of them. I left that episode liking Negan and his character even more. A flawed man, upset with himself and his choices, now coping and trying to exist in a very dark world. It pulls him into a bad place, but part of him remains from the new world, or part of him remains from the old world, and I think you'll see that part come back in season 11 as he burns Lucille in the fire. That sort of kind of represents him moving on from a not so distant self, letting go of his wife and moving forward towards redemption. This character to me is by far the best character right now. He deserves more of the spotlight moving forward. And this episode really helps for us to kind of move past the, psychopathic version of Negan and more down the path of a more humanized version of Negan, where you can start to relate and understand him and maybe see why he did the things that he did. Whether they were wrong or right, you understand that bad men caused him to miss out on saving his wife. Now, you can make the argument that the treatments never would have worked, and maybe not, but because he was held up for such a long, extended period of time, his wife was not able to get the treatment, and she had sadly died. And so that left a very, very sour taste in his mouth. And so he realizes, and he says it to the guy, the biker guy, he goes, I'm starting to realize I'm capable of doing some crazy things. And I'm learning that more and more each day. And you're about to learn it real quick. You're about to learn it right now too. And so he was bitter, he was resentful, and he was angry. And it's nobody's fault that his wife died of cancer. That's just life. But there is something to learn from this moment. And that when you get dealt bad cards, you lose someone to cancer, you lose someone to some tragic accident. Maybe you lost your job, your boss fired you, never treated you fairly. Maybe you've had a couple stretch of bad luck. The thing you have to remember is that you're not alone in this treacherous pathway of life. We're all going through adversity at some point. Even the people that are posting their vacations on Instagram every day, sitting poolside, who are influencers and looking like they're living their best life, I can assure you they have their own hurdles and turmoils to go through, and probably more than you. And much of that is more likely fake. But what we have to remember is when these things come, they will change us. They're meant to. Obstacles in life are meant to help us grow, to make us stronger, to bring us closer to God. And one thing is, when they come and we conquer them, even if we don't necessarily conquer them in the way that we would like, in other words, the family member doesn't survive cancer and they pass away, or we lose someone in an accident, or we don't end up getting the promotion, maybe we even got fired, or we were forced to resign, or we got laid off. It's important to remember to take that moment and let it make you stronger, but don't let it make you resentful. Because the moment you become resentful and angry, it's the moment you become even worse. You become bitter, and it drives you down a very dark path, and it can lead you to doing very dark things. Negan is an extreme example of that, where he becomes very bitter, very angry, and very resentful of his wife's death. And you could say for good reason, right? Because he was trying to do the right thing and these men stopped him. Fair enough. But it leads him down a very long road of recovery. And honestly, it takes him being locked up in jail to get some sort of insight into the way he was acting and the way he was leading his life, because he could have been Rick, right? He could have been the fearless leader, the admirable leader, but his resentment and his anger took him down a different path. Now he has to try to claw his way back out of that. And for the most part, he's doing a very good job of it. But you have to remember, he did some pretty bad things to these people. And whether he's a bad guy or a good guy or not, the anti-hero, whatever you want to call him, he still has to try to find a way to earn these people's trust. Whether we believe he deserves it or not, or however, he still has to figure that out. And you're going to find it's very, very difficult. And beyond that, Maggie's back. And if there's one person that's going to really hate him, it's going to be Maggie, and for good reason. So there's a lesson to be learned here. Do not let your trials make you bitter and resentful. Instead, let your trials make you better, make you stronger, make you even greater than you were before. Smile in the face of adversity and walk through the trial of fire and come out the other side clean. Yeah, it may suck. It may not work out very well. You may not win, but at least you can walk away and say you're better for it. That should be the goal, no matter what it is. Find your inner monster, tame it, and go conquer and make your life the best life it can be. All in all, this season was a mixed bag. I didn't think it was absolutely terrible. It had a lot of interesting moments and a lot of really kind of things that kind of sucked you in a little bit. But for every moment like that, there were equally awful and atrocious moments, like the episode of Carol and Daryl. Just really, really bad. Them hunting rats and fixing motorcycles. Other than those last, honestly, besides the bonus episodes, this season to me was a decent season. I don't think it was as bad as like the Negan War. I think there's moments it could have been better. I do believe the Whisperers are just kind of a stupid enemy, but I will give the writers some credit, and they did a decent job of making them interesting, right? They were still interesting, even though they were very silly and stupid. And it was kind of, it was really dark too. Like it was season 9 was very dark, in many cases. The Whisperers were just really dark people. It brought a very different kind of atmosphere to the show that we weren't really quite used to. These were very kind of twisted and the best way I can describe it is just dark, man. Just really kind of not used to seeing stuff like that. But anyway, all in all, not bad. The season 11 is another extended season. Hopefully they do a better job. I think this is post-COVID, so it should be much better. I will say that I'm, again, 11 episodes in to season 11, and so far, so good. Actually feels much, much better in terms of a show. The Walking Dead. Is it season 1, 2, and 3? No. I don't think we'll ever be as good as season 1, 2, and 3. And that's just because of the writers. Those guys aren't around anymore. You're never going to be that good ever again. But I do believe that season 11 is turning out to be very entertaining. It feels very like season 4 vibe of entertainment value. So I'm actually enjoying it. Kind of going to dread it when it ends because I am actually really locked in. And so I'm looking forward to talking to that one with you guys. So on that note, folks, thank you so much for listening. We went very long, an hour and 38, almost 2 hours here. It was a very long season. There was a lot to get through, and I abbreviated it quite a bit. Again, a lot of good, a lot of bad. It's just what it is. Not nearly as bad as some of the previous seasons. So I'm going to give it credit where credit is due. I was expecting much worse. And, COVID did screw up the final episodes of this season, but you can blame COVID all you want, but I blame the production staff, more or less, because at the end of the day, you're the one who writes it. You're the one who produces it. You're the one that directs it, and it's on your hands to make it work. And it's also on you to say, this is just crap, guys. We need to go back and rewrite this. And they didn't. So, thank you guys so much for listening. I truly do appreciate it. If you like the show, you can like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon as well. Amazon Music has my podcast. I can't talk anymore. Tell me what you thought of season 10. You can hit me up. You can email me at davidking.therant@gmail.com. You can also hit me up on Twitter, The Rant with DK. You can also hit me up on Instagram with The Rant with David King and Facebook. You can go to all those places and let me know what you thought about season 10. Did you like it? Did you love it? What did you think of those bonus episodes? I would love to know. Look forward to the Walking Dead special finale, episode 11. That will not be this week, I can tell you that. It probably will be later next week. I'm hoping to do a big one for that. So look forward to that. The finale, we'll be wrapping this thing up. We're going to bring it home. Very, very excited. Thank you so much again for following me along on this journey. If you've been doing that, I appreciate it. If you like the show, tell a friend, give us a rating, and give us a review. It helps more than you know. You have no idea how much it helps when you tell somebody who you think would enjoy this podcast to go and listen. Other announcements. We got some news, some sad news over the weekend. We're probably going to touch on that tomorrow or later this week. I got some things to say about it. And we got some interviews coming, so I'm excited about that. Well, so stay tuned, folks. We've got a lot on the docket. Also, too, if you're a fan of golf, the Golf King podcast is back, so go look up the Golf King. It is back. The season has begun. So check us out there. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it all, and good night.